all causality comes from elementary particles is sometimes called upward causation. This idea is called downward causation. What's wrong with this? Unfortunately, there is something wrong with it. A scientist would say that how does God interact with the person that is being healed? Because if God is non-material, then God must live in a non-material world. Call it heaven. That's the way we call it. Our Lord in heaven, right? But heaven is made of different substance than earth. So how does a realm which is different, non-material, interact with the material realm? If you think about it, they can't without a mediator. If you have nothing in common, have you noticed? You cannot interact. They need a mediator. What could be a mediator? A mediator got to be a signal that travels back and forth between the two. But every signal carries energy. This is a finding that scientists have made, very valid finding. And energy of the material universe alone is always a constant. So energy never goes to heaven from earth, nor does energy ever come from heaven to earth. What a predicament. So this idea, which is called dualism, that there is a God separate from us, separate world, not matter. And here we are matter, material, earthly people. Such a God is useless because such a God cannot interact with us. So if you are a believer in spirit in this dualistic way, that too is wrong belief system. It's not going to help you. It's also full of paradox because of this idea of dualism. It's called paradox of dualism. It's also not valid from an experimental point of view, just as scientific materialism. So what is the right answer? What is the right way of thinking? This is the question. It took us many decades. It took us quantum physicists many decades to solve this problem. And the solution is deceptively simple, but it is a radical solution. The solution is, as I have already quoted Richard Amoroso, solution is consciousness is the ground of all being. If consciousness is the ground of all being, right, why is that a solution? That's a solution because even matter is part of that being. So what are material possibilities made of? The same being. It's part of consciousness. When consciousness is choosing among quantum possibilities, consciousness is choosing out of its own. It's not choosing, it's not interacting with something separate from itself. When you choose from yourself, do you need a mediator? No sirree, of course you don't need a mediator to talk with yourself, to choose from yourself, to choose what is inside of you already. You're choosing from your own possibilities. Nothing needs to mediate. Nothing needs to mediate. And that's the catch. The world is us. It's you. Literally. There is no separateness between consciousness and matter. Matter is part of consciousness. Brain is made of consciousness instead of the other way around. Body is made of consciousness instead of other way around. And therefore, consciousness can choose health of the body, of the brain, of an organ, and therefore consciousness can heal. There's some tricks here, of course, you have to understand. There's some tricks here. What is the main trick. The main trick is to realize, of course, that this interconnectivity is at a deeper, higher level of consciousness. This is why we say downward causation. Normally, in our ego consciousness, we are not in that higher, deeper, either word can be used, level of consciousness. And this is the problem. Ego consciousness is obviously separate. How does the ego come about? Ego comes about because although consciousness chooses when it's fully quantum, when quantum possibilities go about with complete freedom to choose from and really rules the behavior of our brain and our body, of our mind and our vital body, all these components that consciousness as a ground of being can hold. When you are choosing freely, it's one thing. We choose from this totality, we choose from this whole. But that freedom gets lost. How? Because stimuli come to us as we grow up. Stimuli come to us and we respond in a certain way. And the equation of movement that we have under a stimulus, quantum equation, these equations get modified. That you can understand easily because there is feedback from the memory of past responses, and this feedback modifies the equation of movement of the system that we have. That may sound a bit complicated, but it won't be complicated when you look at the results. Everybody knows about it. This is why we say we get conditioned. Stimulus response reinforcement conditions us. That stimulus response reinforcement is the feedback of the response and the memory to it, and that feedback changes the equation, changes the mathematics, changes the interaction. And gradually we have a conditioned response. You can easily see it by trying to interact with a child. If you ask a question of a child will give so many answers. So many answers. It's a delight to ask a child, like, what is this? And child would say all kinds of things. It's called the child's ability of divergent thinking. Very important ingredient of creativity. But if you ask an adult, I mean, of course, the adult has to know it. That's why naive adults are sometimes quite creative themselves. But if you ask a knowledgeable adult, in this audience, for example, the adult will variously say that with the remote controls that can flip a picture, handle a PowerPoint presentation, is also a laser pointer, etc., etc. No scope of creativity there, but is that all it is? You think about it a little bit. Indeed, this can be used easily as a ruler, drawing a line. This can also be used even as a barometer. If I drop this thing from this height and measure the time of fall to the ground, from that I can estimate the barometric pressure, atmospheric pressure at this height. Can you believe it? So if your mind is open, like a child, then many answers are available, not just one. So similarly, conditioning, response, reinforcement, this conditioning Stimulus response reinforcement is what produces the ego, takes the possibilities away. We begin to accept, well, the world is misery. Yes, the world has disease, the world has suffering. This is why Mary Baker Eddy called it illusion. We do illusory thinking. We become too pessimistic too quickly. Let us do it correctly. So this is the way we think. Consciousness collapses waves of possibility into actual events. Consciousness chooses. Consciousness chooses from a transcendent domain. And then the actuality happens in the immanent domain. Beyond the transcendent domain, we have choice. In the transcendent domain, beyond the immanent domain, we have choice. In the transcendent domain, from that we choose. So what is the trick of this then? Trick of it is to know how to connect. How to connect. It's very fascinating how it got that way, present worldview. Because if you look at the etymological origin of the word religion, it came from religieux or religiere in Latin, and that means to reconnect. If you are familiar with the Indian word yoga, it means the same thing, to rejoin. So what is going on here? Ideas of religion, ideas of yoga, they are right. We have to somehow reconnect. We have to learn to reconnect. We have to recognize that we have the power of healing, downward causation, whatever you want to call it, this quantum choice, this freedom. If we can access this transcendent consciousness. So what's the catch? Why can't we? Of course, one reason is that we live in the ego condition. But there is a second interesting reason too. Because as soon as immanence occurs, as soon as consciousness has collapsed, possibility into actuality, what happens is that consciousness is no longer whole. It gets divided into a subject and an object. This is a beautiful picture. Let's see how we're doing with time. We're not doing very well with time. So would you mind if I don't explain it? Good? Consciousness does matter? We're trying to get rid of that thing. Sorry. Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay. So this one we need to take in our heart. We are all one. Whenever we look, we are looking from that one consciousness, and this is why we never see possibilities. Possibilities always become actuality. But we identify with our conditioning. This is the problem. And the other problem is that whenever we create immanence, whenever we create the manifest world, we have lost that unity anyway. So where does the unity reside? Where is this unity? Where is this unity? It's unmanifest, always. This is the problem. It's unconscious. In psychological language, it's unconscious. When we have collapsed, we become a subject and the world is our object. We see the world. But this is a division from that unity. In this division, we already have lost downward causation. The downward causation, that source of causal power, that healing power, is unconscious in us. How do we access something that we will never encounter consciously. This is the second problem. So the first problem is the ego, and the next problem is that all that needs to happen, this choice, is indeed taking place, a consciousness which will never encounter a subject encountering an object. This realm of consciousness is always going to be unconscious in us. This is why the spiritual traditions are simplified. Spiritual people, church people, they come to us and they speak every day about, I spoke to God. Who are they speaking to? Now they are not speaking to God. In their own language, what they are speaking to is their Holy Spirit. Already separated, subject and object. Yes, it is true that the Spirit that we talk to in those moments of great inspiration is holy. It has wholeness, but it does not have total wholeness. So talking to God does not help all that much. It's beyond any talking, beyond any experience. God is unconscious in us. This is why the idea of spiritual healing, the idea of quantum healing, is more complex than it seems in the first sight. Complex because, of course, we cannot even access it in our ego, but we cannot even access it in any waking consciousness in which awareness exists, and awareness means already that there is a subject-object space. The choice actually occurs in a domain of consciousness which can only be called unconscious. There is no awareness in that domain. I cannot see the power, the causal power. I cannot see that being from which the causal power, downward causation, comes from. So how do we then heal ourselves? This is the problem. Okay? But now, I'll have to introduce some other concepts to you. This is part of right thinking. The second part of right thinking about healing is that disease is not just disease of the physical body. Although agreed that this physical body, or gross body, certainly is undeniably there, and certainly agreed that it has symptoms which undoubtedly make us feel that I am sick, I'm not feeling well, I am suffering. But it is also true that if you are careful, then when you are sick, next time if you have a cold or a flu or something a little more serious, examine your discomfort, examine your source of pain. Very important. And acknowledge the very simple fact that your suffering, your pain, your disease is not just the material body. There are also internal experiences that you are having. Isn't it true that when we feel even from a simple common cold, in fact, cold is a very good example of where we feel the disease or the pain. Yes, we have a little headache, and the head does seem to be in pain. But what's even worse is the feeling that comes with it. I feel yucky. We say in English, I don't know the Portuguese term, but there has to be a term, I feel yucky. But that yuck is not a tendency to vomit. It's a tendency to just feel horrible. That's what we are trying to describe. I don't feel good. Everybody says, I don't feel good. What is a feeling? Can you describe a feeling as a body phenomenon? Some people try. Is it coming from the physical body? No, it's associated with the physical body, but it's not of the physical body. Everything about the physical body we sense, we don't feel. What do we feel? We feel a kind of energy associated with the physical body. The traditions have names for this energy. In English we call it vital energy, in Portuguese, energia vital. But in traditions like India, they call it prana. They have a name for it. They named it. In China it's called qi. Again, they named it because those ancient traditions have discovered long ago that physical body disease often takes place in the movement of this vital energy. That's what is lost. The reason that we feel yucky when we have a cold really doesn't make much sense. Even in the absence of a headache, we know sometimes we don't have headaches. Well, we have some secretion from the nose maybe, but truly that's very minor. Why should that make you feel yucky everywhere in the body? Doesn't make much sense. Only the nose. Yes, agreed. Nose will be blocked and breathing will be a little bit harder, but shouldn't make feel yucky all over. So this ancient tradition says, oh, something is wrong with your vital body as well. Vital energies are not moving appropriately. They're not feeling that vitality that you normally feel when you are well. Very different language. So these traditions, they try to correct the vital body. They try to heal it at the vital body level. This is a very, very important point. Why am I not seeing any results? Okay. Oops. Okay. So we introduced the concept of vital energy and vital body. Mental body, that's another body that is not very hard to find. Mental body, corpo mental. We think. Today it's very fashionable to think that all thinking comes from the brain. Brain thinks. It's a total fiction. Brain is associated with thinking. When we take MRI pictures of the brain while we think, and neurophysiologists are great in displaying these pictures as proof positive that it is the brain that really produces all the mind, they're still speaking nonsense. Agreed that the brain is associated with the mind, so brain makes representations of the mind, and indeed if the mind changes, different thoughts, brain will be active in different areas. All that is true. But a causal relationship is not the only way that two things are associated. They can be associated, says quantum physics, in a different way. They can be associated because they're correlated through a medium. Is that dualism? No, that's ancient thinking. Quantum physics says they can be correlated because they belong to consciousness itself. Consciousness correlates, consciousness mediates between the mind and the brain, between the vital body and the physical body. How does consciousness do it? Consciousness does it because they're made of consciousness. They're all made of consciousness. And therefore consciousness does not require any signal to mediate the interactions of this body. Does consciousness have such a power of interacting without signals? Yes. It's called quantum non-locality. Quantum non-locality. Now here is a beautiful thing that happened in the world of medicine. In 1982, an American doctor named Larry Dossey, he wrote a book called Space, Time and Medicine. Beautiful book. And he speculated that this quantum non-locality should play some role in healing. So some people took him quite seriously, and in 1988, it was found experimentally that some people prayed at a distance for the healing of some people at a hospital in San Francisco. These patients were never told who is being prayed for. But only some people were prayed for and others were not prayed for. They were the control subjects. Doctors did not know who is the control subject and who is being prayed for. But irrespective of all this, when they measured the healing rate of the people, all the patients, indeed people who were prayed for, their healing rate was significantly greater than the healing rate of the people who were not prayed for. At a distance, the prayers, people who were praying, the prayer groups, they never knew who is being prayed for, except that they knew the names. They never knew the people personally. They never have met these people. They just read the names from a list and prayed for their healing. And yet, these people at a distance were healed at a much greater rate than the people who are not prayed for. How do you explain such a thing? You explain by such a thing by saying that it is non-local. Interaction without any signal, signal-less communication. You see? Consciousness can affect without signal. Consciousness as power, is downward causation, is non-local. So in a non-local consciousness, we can easily fathom that there are not one world of matter, but there are actually 4 worlds. And this is the mystery, total mystery, that has clouded us so far from knowing the full science of healing. Because we are not just that physical body, we are also vital body, vital energies that we feel. We are also the mental body, where we think. Mental body is not the brain, can be seen also in another way very easily. What is thinking about? In the material description, thinking has no meaning, because matter cannot process meaning. Computers cannot process meaning. They can represent meaning with the symbols, but computer is a symbol processing machine, as you all know. That's all it can process. So in the material way of thinking, mind is crucial. Meaning is actually the crucial thing that sometimes determines between healing and disease. I give the wrong meaning and block vital energy movement. And if I block vital energy movement, that can produce wrongness, blockage also of the physical body. These simple things are now becoming clear if we allow us to think that yes, there is a mental, there is a vital, there is even a supramental, this corpus supramental. What is that about? Long time ago, precisely about 2,500 years ago, the great philosopher Plato suggested that we have what he called archetypes of thinking. We ordinarily look at the world as fixed meanings, but really it's not like that. That's just a shadow show of illusion. Again, the same word as Mary Baker Eddy used. Behind the shadow show, there are real stuff. We don't quite see them because we're always attracted to the shadow show. the show of illusion. If we knew the real cause of what the real meanings are, we would discover the archetype, the stuff that we sometimes intuit, the stuff that we value because we know that they're kind of difficult to experience, but they are the essence, they give the essence of our life, like love, beauty, justice, truth, goodness. These are the things that Plato calls archetypes of thinking. They produce much thinking, but they cannot be accessed except in feeling, intuition. So if we include all these four bodies, if we include in addition the body that is the whole, consciousness as the ground of all being, then we have five bodies, five sources of where things can go wrong, five sources of where we can look for healing. If something goes wrong with the vital, or if there is something wrong with the vital physical connection, it can start with the physical. For example, in cold or a flu, we already know that yes, it starts with the physical. A virus have attacked the physical body. The virus is the cause, no denying it. But even there, the discomfort that we feel is certainly in the vital body. What has happened? Because the vital body is the blueprint of making physical organs. Rupert Sheldrake told us this. He suggested that, look, there is this phenomenon called morphogenesis, how a single-celled embryo becomes this many cells in the body, the organs. This is a total mystery in biology. But Sheldrake said, well, it does not have to be a mystery. We can, if we posit that there is a non-physical body, morphogenetic field, he gave a name to this body, and that's what makes biological form. Morphogenesis is making of form. If we accept that vital body consists of morphogenetic field that helps the making of biological forms, the organs, the correct description is using the computer. With the help of the computer, what do? We make a representation of mental meaning. Computer cannot process meaning, but we can use the symbols to represent our meaning in the computer. And then the computer can have a mind, sort of. It can carry out functions of our own mind. So in the same way, this vital body represents a blueprint of biological functions, and then physical organs represent these blueprints. So that idea can be represented as biological functions, and then they come down to blueprint morphogenetic fields, and from this morphogenetic fields, the physical body is built as representations. Where are these representations? These are now becoming familiar thanks to chakra psychology and chakra medicine, that we have feelings, and the major centers of feelings are the chakras. If you come to tonight's workshop, we'll talk much more about the chakras and their ramifications in our healing process. And so we are now getting close to ideas that you will recognize. So the vital body and physical body are correlated. The morphogenetic field and the physical organ are correlated. What do we feel when we are feeling? Like if we have a feeling in the heart chakra. What is involved, of course, is the immune system. Heart chakra has an organ called thymus gland, and that is representing a morphogenetic field. The immune system, as you know, gives us the idea of who is me and who is not me. So if you have a person in your life who you do not consider as separate from you, what is that relationship called? It's called love relationship, right? You don't consider this person separate from you. So you and him or you and her would consider to be the same person, you are mine, right? And therefore you have bodily union and it's fun, right? So all this is coming from where? Coming from the feelings that you get from the movement of the morphogenetic field. Whenever you engage your heart chakra, your morphogenetic fields are connected. And this movement of the morphogenetic field that comes about whenever you pay attention to your thymus gland is what you call romantic love, that feeling of warmth, that feeling of tingle, that feeling of even heart throb. It's all in the movement of the morphogenetic field and the immune system. Nice to know, isn't it? Because what will happen then? What will happen then if somehow you have a thought that is blocking this energy? Next time a cold happens, next time a flu happens, just look at where your romance is. Why do people say routinely, not tonight, honey, I have a headache? Why? Why? A headache is here. What is that? Why is that preventing your lovemaking? Pray tell, why? Why is that? Why it is? Because the entire physical body is not connected with the organs very much, including the thymus gland, is not really connecting to the morphogenetic field, and therefore the movement in the heart, you're not feeling it. Not even the movement in the sex chakra, the second chakra. Even that you are not feeling very much when you have a headache, when you have a cold, when you have a flu. And therefore one sign, all doctors know this. If you don't know this, write it down. One sign, one sure sign of health of a patient. I know myself because I had pneumonia once, and pneumonia is a very debilitating disease. You cannot do anything. Just weakens you enormously. And then one day I noticed my libido has come back. And immediately I knew I'm going to be all right. So as soon as your libido returns, you want to make love, you know that you are going to be all right. Because your vital body and physical body has started connecting once again. So this is oftentimes is this disconnect that we are not feeling the connection with the vitals. It's a disconnect that has happened between the vital and physical. I was going to say disconnect that we feel, but then realize that no, we cannot feel the disconnect, we feel the absence of the connection. Pain in this language, we finally have a physical theory, a scientific theory of what pain is about. Pain is not about any physical molecule or any chemical molecule or any physical changes in the body. Pain is not located in the neurons or whatever people try to describe pain as. Biologists know this. There is really no theory of pain. And yet, acupuncturists just simply making a little hole in your limb or wherever, they can even heal the pain of headache. How is that? Mysteries of pain is abundant. Allopathic medical people still cannot give any justification of why people should have such things as chronic fatigue, which is a constant feeling of pain. Where does pain come from? In this kind of description, pain is easy to explain. It's a disconnect between the vital and the physical. That's what we feel as pain, this absence. That yucky feeling that we have in the case of flu or a cold, that yucky feeling is nothing but a temporary disconnect between the vital and the physical. So what does the Chinese practitioner or the homeopathic practitioner or the Ayurvedic practitioner, what do? They treat your vital body. Whereas the disease is not in the vital body at all in the conventional wisdom, because virus is causing it, virus is acting on the physical. No, you cannot cure a virus. There is no way of killing a virus. We don't know of any way of killing a virus without affecting the body. So allopathic medicine really cannot do very much at all, except maybe take care of the symptom of headache, for which we do have a good allopathic medicine, namely aspirin. But vital body? Yes, we do need to adjust the vital body, and we can adjust the vital body to come to better equilibrium with the physical, better connection, by feeding this vital body medicine, namely homeopathy, Ayurveda, and Chinese medicine. This is the simple answer. This is why whenever you have a cold, never go to an allopathic doctor, although you can take. I disagree with the homeopath who is, classic homeopaths, they don't prescribe a allopathic medicine at the same time. The new medicine is telling us that no, it's okay to have integrative medicine. You can treat the physical body. Yes, it will affect the vital a little bit, but not enough to discount it. And you can take a homeopathic medicine to restore the connection. It's okay. So this new medicine we call integrative medicine, where we don't discount the allopathic entirely, because allopathy does treat the symptoms that buys you time, but it is this vital body medicine which is much more effective in terms of healing the disconnect. And it's much easily done. Why? Because remember, all these bodies are quantum, but there is a difference between physical and the vital. Physical is gross. Why is it gross? It's gross because its quantum movement is very subdued at the macro level. So at the level that I have physical organs, the quantum movement, except for the brain, quantum movement is relatively very subdued. Brain has there is quantum movement in the immune system quite a bit, but then it gets lesser and lesser for our other organs. And it is because the quantum movement is much less. It is because of that it is very hard to be creative. What we mean quantum movement is much less. The possibility spectrum is still there. All objects are possibilities, but the possibility of movement is not very much. Just a little bit. This is the problem. But this many possibilities open, that just is not the case with the physical at the macro level. And that's the problem with quantum healing the physical. So if the physical is really being caused by a physical cause, we're not talking about that as the subject of quantum healing. But the real subject of quantum healing is what? If the disease is being caused at a place where quantum movement is rampant. Even the vital body, it turns out, the quantum movement is not that rampant. So to be creative in the vital is not that simple. This is why vital body medicine is quite concrete. Like homeopathy or Ayurvedic, you get something very definite. Where is quantum movement very, very rampant? There you cannot give anything very definite because it's so much quantum, like the mind. And that's why mind-body medicine was discovered only very recently. We didn't even know about it in the ancient times. But suppose mind is causing the movement of the vital body to block. How can that happen? Easily. For example, a kid gets jilted by a girl. A boy gets jilted by a girl, not an uncommon incident. But this boy is a very sensitive boy. So he gets so hurt that he says, I'll never love again. And he literally follows it through. Girls are attracted, he is an attractive boy, then become an attractive man, but he still can't love because he has this trauma of being rejected by a girl, and he never can face a trauma again. So he says, I'll never love again, and reinforces it, never love. Energy gets blocked in the heart chakra. Thymus gland, part of the immune system, is now relatively ineffective. And guess what? Eventually, the suppressed vital energy of the heart chakra becomes so dominant part, immune system becomes so inactive that the immune system forgets to kill off all the abnormal cells that are automatically generated in the body, because here is the wonderful thing about the body. Body is renewed, being continuously renewed by the food molecules that we take. When the body is renewed, it's renewed by cell division. And these new cells, creation of new cells, always produce some mistakes that happen. So abnormal cells are being created in the body that are not quite right, and that are killed off by the immune system routinely. But if your immune system is not acting right, then of course these abnormal cells will not be killed off. And that's when they become malignant. They grow and grow and grow. Cancer. So this boy, who is a man now, has cancer. This cancer has the root of a mental block of vital energy in the heart chakra. So how to heal this boy? How to heal this man? If you try to heal it, if you try to heal this kind of cancer through, let's say, radiation treatment, or through, let's say, chemotherapy, or through, let's say, surgery, what will happen? Well, okay, temporarily, you take off the cancer, but the heart chakra energy is still blocked. The immune system is still not active. And all the emotional reasons that suppression will remain, and the cancer